All right, we are live, and welcome to Film Geek Primer Live, episode 23, the episode yet to be titled. Your regular host, Santo, can't be here, so I'm doing a piss-poor job of filling in. My name is Aaron. Thank you. With us, as always, and we'll lead with the first person to clap, the rest of you are dead to me, is Shu, John Schuster. Welcome.
Well, you know, it's not the first time I've had to clap first.
I don't know what you mean, but it makes me itch. And of course, also with us is Warren. Warren, welcome. Back in the lounge, I see.
I never left.
I'm sorry.
You act like I go somewhere.
It's entirely believable you've been there for the past 7 days.
Yeah.
I'm starting to wonder if you're not tied to that bed like Misery style.
Well,
and
I think Misery, this is by choice.
Comes in.
It was by choice, and you know, the hardest part was railroading my own ankles because it's like you can't get the leverage from here. But
you know when I think it's an example of human resourcefulness.
Yeah.
You wanna if there's something you put your mind to that you want to accomplish, you can indeed set a goal and get it done. And for you, Mr. Graff, congratulations in your endeavor. You, as well, should be applauded.
You certainly deserve the clap. If anybody deserves the clap, it's you.
You was giving out the clap like it's going out of style.
It really is.
All right, and we're also expecting, I believe, Gabe El Tremendo. Damn it, I blew his cover. That's why Batman never told me who he was. I think we're expecting him, but I don't see him online yet. Let me just do a quick plumb of the internet, and no, I don't see him.
You just searched the whole internet?
I did. Well, I used a third-party vendor called Google.
That was well plumbed. I applaud you.
You know something? If there's one thing I'm good at,
it's being a plum.
It's plumbing.
Oh, I see. Well done. Well done.
So let's just do a quick go-around and see what everyone's been up to this week, geek-wise. So I'm going to start with you, Shu. What have you been doing?
Not a whole heck of a lot when it comes to the whole geek thing, per se. Managed to catch a couple flicks, one that has yet to be released, that I was invited to a screening of, and the other is part of my West Coast movie feed approach, where I wait until movies get to the cheap theaters, go on a cheap night, and spend about $1.50 to see a flick. So I saw X-Men that route about a week or so ago. And
well, wait, can I just jump back to the screening real quick?
Yes, sir, you may.
Lucy? Was the movie Lucy by any chance?
No, I did not see Lucy. Sadly, I have not seen Lucy.
Okay, because I had heard that the stars weren't really promoting that movie. So they didn't have junkets or premieres per se as much as they had these select screenings among tastemakers in the industry. So
well, if there's someone who clearly has taste, it would be me.
Right. If you get a threshold of Twitter followers or something.
Right. You would think that when it comes to wanting somebody special at a screening, I would be at the top of that. I would be at the top of said list. Yes.
You would be at the top of my special.
Instead, I saw the new Expendables film.
Is that out?
No,
he saw a screening.
Oh.
See, because I'm special, and so I get to see stuff early occasionally.
So how?
Oh, that's right. Someone else on my Facebook feed saw that early. So
really?
I haven't seen any of the Expendables.
What did they think?
They enjoyed it. But they seem to be big fans of the franchise as a whole. So I would ask the two of you, how is it worth my time to investigate?
What kind of movie? What kind of action film do you like? Do you have a category of action film that you enjoy?
A category. I have seen movies starring each and every one of the Expendables.
Okay, did you generally enjoy those films?
I went back for more.
Okay, then watch Expendables 2. Did you see?
It's like I'm taking a BuzzFeed quiz.
Yes. There's a little bit. You have to click on the link to get to the next question.
Right.
And the next question is: did you happen to see the latest Rambo film? The last Rambo movie that Stallone made, what was this?
No, I did not. That is that is. Well, I like to think of it as a remake of Beyond Rangoon, but apparently it was a little bit more into Burma than that.
Yeah, that's a fairly safe assessment. Okay, the latter Rambo film it kind of in the first 45 minutes or so, it sort of wants to be Stallone's Unforgiven. But then it just drifts into massive blood and gore over the top.
At some point he says, forget it. I'm just going to
start splay fill, exactly. He kind of gave up the goat about halfway through. And they blow and they blow shit up at a ridiculous rate. The first Expendables film is basically the same script as that. As a result, it's not as fun. The second
it's funnier. It's funnier than it doesn't take itself as seriously at all.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. You like all those?
Different. I don't like all those movies. I agree exactly what she said. Rambo, the fifth or sixth Rambo, whatever it was, it was supposed to be some sort of Unforgiven for him. It was like his moment to show his range.
Stop saying that.
It is, though. It is. You get that sense from it. But and then at some point, he's like, you know what? On the other, he's like, yeah, I guess I could do this serious. But then on the other hand, I could hack people's arms off with a machete in such a violently visceral way. I might as well do that. Also, I've got this huge M60 machine gun that I can blow people's body parts off with and show it on screen completely. I'm just gonna do that. That's kind of what he went with the Rambo movie. And I didn't see the second Expendables, so I had enough people tell me how horrible it was.
Oh, I think they're wrong.
Oh, really?
Yeah, oddly enough, I think the second Expendables is much better than the first.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's streaming. It's on Netflix, so I think I might. I probably will.
Because it does a much better job of sort of giving you the quippy lines that you expected. It's more like a greatest hits album. So you have these action stars who are basically acting like what you'd expect them to act like the first time through. I think the first one tries to be a little too heavy. This one kind of meets in the middle, and it's, I think, better than the first, not as good as the second. But it's okay.
So if all three are streaming, it sounds like it would be worth my time to just try them all, to just take the plunge.
Hey,
and
you know what? It's not like you have a life. Dub, is it like you have a life, really? What's another 2 hours going to be?
It's not like it's Transformers 4.
Could I have seen all three Expendables movies in the time it took me to sit through Transformers 4?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll check out the Expendables, and we'll talk about it again very shortly. But I also wanted to get back to what you thought of X-Men: Days of Future Past.
I liked X-Men. And I know this is an interesting area of conversation, because in some of these Film Geek Primer casts that we've done earlier, Santo has been rather anti-X-Men. And I think the gist of his argument is that he gets tired of X-Men basically rehashing the same theme again and again and again. But I thought it was pretty well done. I thought it was, do I think it's a great film? I don't know. Do I know if it's going to hang up? I don't, hold up? I don't know. But generally speaking, while watching it, I thought it did a nice job laying out what it was trying to accomplish and got across the things that I thought it was supposed to get across. I thought it was very solid. And that, falls under the category. Go ahead.
Warren, did you like it?
Oh, I did like it. I mean, like she said, I don't think it's not going to. I don't think it'll stand the test of time and be considered a great movie, and people are going to be talking about it. But while I was in the theater and I was watching it, I had a good time, and it was good. I have read some X-Men, but not a lot of X-Men, so I know there are some people who are really invested in the characters and everything about it, and so they're just like, well, this story had this character and this story had this. That's not how they would act, and so they kind of nitpick it that way. But for the 2-hour movie and sitting there, I was thoroughly entertained and I had a good time, and I guess that's kind of all I expect from that kind of movie.
Right.
For the most part.
Right. Yeah. I think it
was very standalone, and I think I really appreciated that. I don't remember anything that happened in the previous X-Men. I got sort of a vibe of what some of the relationships were to sort of remind me. It's like, oh yeah, Wolverine and Jean Grey. I forgot about that. But I don't feel like you needed to see anything before this movie, and I don't really feel like I need to see anything afterwards, to the point where the little teaser that they dropped at the end was so baffling that it meant nothing to me. Like, it was so completely devoid of any context or connection to anything else. It was like another movie had started that had the same budget. And I was like, oh, that's great.
Did it almost feel like, why did I bother just sitting through 7 minutes of credits to get that?
It absolutely did. That was the first, now that I think about it, that was the first, I'm so disappointed that I sat through this waiting for this crap that I've experienced in these movies in a while.
That is 7 minutes that you could have invested toward one of the Expendables movies.
Yeah, that's an action scene.
I should probably just keep those movies on my phone at all times, so that in case I've got a few minutes here and there, I can watch.
Well done. I think that's an excellent approach.
Yeah, well worth.
Yeah, I think that would be the way to do it. It was kind of like that week I spent watching Once Upon a Time in the West, 10, 15 minutes at a time. Like, that's just what I did with my my free time.
That takes you more than a week.
Okay, have you ever told Santo that? Because I would think that Santo would consider that criminal. How dare you watch Once Upon a Time in the West in small bits?
We had to get past it. I made a video about it. I'll link to it. It's yeah, it wasn't my proudest moment, but it was either that. Well, here's what I remember the conversation a little bit now. What I told Santo is that my options were to watch Once Upon a Time in the West in 15-minute increments, or potentially never watch that movie again the rest of my life. Like, those were my options. So I went with the only one that included me seeing Once Upon a Time in the West.
So you managed free time in the future from here on out, like, you know.
And I have it pretty well planned. I have it pretty well planned. I've got like pencil sketches.
And you managed to watch Transformers.
Wilson's notebook from Bottle Rocket. It's got the 5-year plan, the 10-year plan. It's like that. It's loosely sketched out.
Well, you know, it's not like you were wasting your time watching Transformers or anything of that ilk.
I wasn't wasting my time. I was
investing.
What's the opposite of wasting?
Investing.
No. All right. There's been too much Transformers talk. We've figured out what you've been. How about Warren? What have you been up to?
What have I been up to? I saw Snowpiercer the other day.
Oh, shoo! Have you seen that?
I have not.
You know, because it's only playing in like 12 theaters in the country. You have to kind of plan.
Although one of them is about a half mile from where I live.
Oh, there you go.
So I could go see this if I deemed.
Yeah, it's I think it's worth seeing. I liked it. I thought it was really good.
I think my issue is that it's getting all of this press and all of this praise. I read a really interesting article today that talked about how there's been such a dearth of indie movies this summer. Like, no small movie has sort of broken through the Wish I Was Here's, and none of those smaller level movies have really made an impact. That this smaller movie, even though it does have sort of the flair of a big budget, but that this smaller movie is like the only one in the summer that's worth talking about. So that's why everyone is talking about it. Not necessarily that it's a fantastic movie, and I certainly think it's flawed. But it was a really interesting point to say that it's getting all of this ink because it's a rarity right now.
The thing is, I don't see it as an indie movie. It's like to me, it's a Korean movie. It's a Korean movie done with American actors or English actors or whoever, you know, with white people, basically. It's a Korean movie done with white people, and it's got the Korean movie mentality, and it's got, you know, because it has a big budget, and it just sort of has. But if you watched it, and if you watched that with Korean actors, it would make perfect sense. It would be completely, like, people would just think it's a foreign film. But when there's white actors in it, it's all of a sudden it's an indie film because it's different than Western storytelling, and you know the message.
Well, I think he had a smaller budget. He didn't have a big studio behind him. He sort of made this internationally and piecemeal with funding where he could get it. I think that's the big difference.
But he broke records in Korea and stuff, like, you know what I mean? It's like it's the biggest movie in South Korea at this point.
Korea.
But yeah, no, I mean, and all the problems I had with it, I mean, I don't think I'm giving it. I mean, it's on a train, so then your mind automatically starts doing the calculations of the people and the stuff and the things.
It had logic problems.
Yeah, the logic problems of 20 or 18 years or whatever it is on this train, and your brain starts crunching the numbers, and then you kind of have to stop and go, okay, hold on. Let's not think about it. Because they try to explain a lot, and they try to make a lot of this stuff work logically. But, sometimes when you do that, it screws things up.
That's where I sort of have the more problems with it, and again, absolutely worth seeing. But I felt like the movie was too gritty to sort of capture the dreamlike state that I think he wanted you to go with. And then there were too many really surreal elements to it that undercut whatever sort of the grittiness was. This was a fable at heart. This was like a really sort of abstract fable about life and class and all of these other things. But because they kept trying to touch on things that were real in it, it took me out of what should have been like a state of mind, which is another thing I read about these. It almost sounded racist coming out of my mouth. I was going to say about these Korean movies, but I know that the Korean movies I've seen have they've got a really weird sensibility to them.
You know what?
I mean,
though,
it's very particular to Korea.
Did you ever see The Good, the Bad, and the Weird?
Like, is that supposed to be funny?
Yeah. Did you ever see The Good, the Bad, and the Weird? I think it's the same guy who directed that. It's like
the same guy that did The Host.
What?
And the Host.
Yeah, The Host.
Yeah, and The Host I really liked, but I always remember it had this one scene in it where you're following these people who think this little girl is dead. And it's super sad, and they're wailing over this little girl, and it's played for laughs. And I just remember being so disturbed by that when I saw it. I'm like, that's not funny. That's like real people's grief at losing their daughter. It was just odd. And there were other moments like that in this movie where I'm like, what are you? Is this supposed to be funny? How much time are we going to spend with these kids?
It's trying to translate. It's the translating of emotions and stuff. I think we talked about this before when we were talking about The Host. Maybe it was a couple weeks ago, where I said I had to look up on the internet the way that they were wailing, like during the funeral scene in The Host. They were wailing in such an extreme way that I was like, oh my god, they're like, it was almost slapsticky funny to me. And then I had to kind of look up to see that, like in Korea, that's considered grieving, and like that's what you do. You're supposed to just let it all out. So there's sort of an.
I'm not going to educate myself or open myself to other cultures of the world. Follow-up question: how awesome was Chris Evans?
Oh yeah, he's great. He was great in that movie. Yeah, he was great. I loved all the acting. I loved everybody in that movie. Like
they were all
the main characters. I thought it was great, except for the character. There was characters in it, like you said, when you said like there's a surreal sort of feel to it sometimes, and that usually came through through some of the characters and the way that they acted. Yeah. There was like a large group. Most of the characters acted in sort of a gritty, realistic way, and like they had had real drive to them and all this stuff. And then other characters felt like I'm like, are these people real, or are they like what? There's kind of weird dream characters.
You know what it was? The movie was half The Dark Knight and half Brazil.
It was. There was a lot of Brazil,
and those two sensibilities were just fighting it out.
Yeah, but yeah, Chris Evans is great. I'm a Chris Evans fan. I was, for Captain America, I was a Chris Evans fan, and I'm just more so.
Well, but Captain America is all about charm, whereas this movie he had serious acting chops. I mean, he had some of the, he had the emotional weight of the movie on him for sure.
Well, part of what it was, Captain America, he's eyes open and he's like kind of brave and like naive. And in this movie, he was just kind of angry and more squinty, like kind of like Clint Eastwoody, and sort of his just like the heavy, and you could see it, and like he looked like a different person, and he did.
I'm sold on him as an actor after that. All right, that's enough movies that Shu hasn't seen.
That's our segment, movies Shu hasn't seen.
Well, since we're talking about Korean racism, I'd like to throw in a little potential racism.
We were almost.
Yeah.
I want to be very clear. We were almost.
I'd like to make a couple pronouncements here. First off, I have a lot of friends that are Korean movies, and two, going back to Expendables 3, the best part about it is Mel Gibson.
Really?
And it reminds me how much I miss seeing Mel Gibson in films. Yeah. So if you get around to watching Expendables 3, it's kind of like, oh yeah, Mel Gibson used to be in a lot of movies, and he's not bad. No. So you take all of the, the baggage part, the outside of cinema baggage part out of the equation to where he's basically been blackballed for mouthing off and he's been a problem. But you watch him on screen and you remember, the guy can act. The guy's got a presence. The guy's got a presence about him, and that was the best. I thought that was the best aspect of the film, to be honest with you. I just wanted to throw that in there. That was the thing I took out of Expendables 3. It lands in the middle between the first two as far as enjoyment factor, but Mel Gibson stood out as being a guy who, that's a guy who I enjoyed watching.
Mel Gibson could almost be his own topic, because I've always thought, like, when his like kind of career blew up, or when the off-screen stuff happened, and as a Jew, I know I'm supposed to hate that guy now. But then after that happened, I watched Apocalyptica or whatever that movie was, and I thought that was a great movie. I was like, this for a movie where I don't know and nobody's speaking and I know the language. I thought it was a beautifully shot movie, and the story was told with very little dialogue, and I was like, wow, he's really got a talent for that. Anti-Semitic son of a bitch knows how to direct a movie.
Sure can shoot. So. Yeah, I have no real problem in general separating like art from artist. I got nothing against an Elia Kazan movie. I got nothing against a Roman Polanski movie. As long as I don't have this sort of as long as the art that they're putting out still has value, I feel like I can recognize it. And
but I think the unfortunate thing here is that Mel Gibson did suffer from that, and that there are others in positions of power who viewed him in such a negative light that his ability to utilize a skill that he does better than a lot of other people, and I don't mean ranting on, going off on crazy rants, which clearly he does well too. The guy's very entertaining. The guy's very charismatic. The guy has a presence. The guy can act. And if and honestly, as a guy who's involved in sports to some degree, I find myself wrestling with the aspect, Dub, that you talked about there too, the ability to separate performance from personality. And it's one of those things where the LeBron James stuff. I constantly am going around and around dealing with, should I give a shit that this guy went from one team to another, and that I think much of his new public relations campaign is prefabricated, or does any of it matter? And if it doesn't matter, then can I appreciate him being a great basketball player? In this case, can I appreciate Mel Gibson being a great actor? I should at this stage of the game be able to recognize that some people are assholes, regardless of what profession they're ultimately in. Separate the two aspects of it and still say, you know what, that person's good at what they do.
Yeah, I just wish that the assholes at my work were as good at what they did.
That's the worst part, when you're an asshole and you suck.
Looking at you, Michael Bay.
Hey, leave him out of this. We've easily given Michael Bay the most press of any filmmaker on this podcast, and we once spent over an hour talking about John Milius. So I think we've got to sort of let that go.
Never.
What else? We were going to talk about, unless there was any old topics anyone wanted to cover. No?
Well, you wanted to dabble on martial arts films, right?
Yes, that was going to be sort of my next question. Is a couple weeks back, when we were having one of our Essentials conversations, Gabe brought up 8-diagram pole fighter.
Right.
And I had never even heard those words put together in that way before. I don't think they go together like that. One of the other movies brought up was 36 Chamber of Shaolin, and I was able to download that. The 36 Chamber of Shaolin has totally stuck with me. The scenes, the imagery, like the film stock. Something about that just 70s kung fu film stock is just really aesthetically pleasing. And I wanted to know where to go from there, and I didn't know where to start because I know that there are hundreds and hundreds of these movies, most of which I've never heard of. I think like there's a couple of Bruce Lee movies streaming on Netflix. I think I was going to try Enter the Dragon.
Yeah, okay. Let's try to. let's try to categorize a little bit as best I can, and I'm sure Warren can be of assistance here.
Sort of. I haven't seen tons.
Most martial arts cinema is broken into, if you're talking about Asian martial arts cinema, and then we can veer into some of the American offshoots, I'm sure, as well. But generally speaking, you've got Shaw Brothers material, and then you have specific actors, okay? Your actors are obviously Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, and then, you know, beyond that, you're looking at, you know, I guess Jet Li to some degree you could toss into that equation, but Jet Li's not real. Jet Li started a lot of more almost serious period pieces as opposed to strict.
Well, his early stuff though was.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
So aren't all those people like 80s actors?
Say what? I didn't hear you there, Dub.
Aren't all those people like 80s actors?
80s?
It sounds like all of the actors you were mentioning did a lot of their work primarily in the 80s. Am I wrong about that?
Yeah, no. I think that's pretty accurate. Bruce Lee, as everybody knows, is considered the king of martial arts.
And he was 70s. He was like the only character actor in the 70s.
But during this time frame in the 60s, the 70s, and even beyond that, and Bruce Lee was the best at taking advantage of this or being able to break through as far as the Western audiences were concerned. In Hong Kong cinema, they were cranking these seemingly 15 martial arts films a week. This is all the industry was.
Your connection isn't keeping up with your gestures. Slow down a little bit.
Was cookie cutter, in essence, formulaic storylines. So if you came through, the classic martial arts storyline is some bad guys go into the good guy's school. They beat up the school. They break the school sign. The guy who's good and kicked out of the school has to go. Is isolated. Has to learn his craft. Ultimately, comes back and fights and wins. Okay, they're basically that's what. But if you were looking at
my sign, my precious sign,
my sign, not my sign.
Yes, signs are important in Asian culture, apparently.
Yeah, no,
Schools and in Asian culture. Dub, Enter the Dragon is a great.
The reason I'm laughing so hard is because I'm pretty sure there's that exact scene in 36 Chamber of Shaolin.
I'm sure you
where
did.
The bad guys come into town and tear down the school's sign.
Oh yeah. There's a reason it's the cliche. There are a phenomenal amount of films out there that a phenomenal amount of martial arts films, and most of them are absolute hell. They're absolute hell shit. But part of the enjoyment is beyond the stunts, and we can get into stunt separation aspects here. If you can get a film that is English dubbed. Most of them were done by British voice actors who just completely butcher the process. So there's a bad movie quality from a multicultural aspect in a lot of these martial arts films that makes for a certain bizarre aspect when you're trying to check them out. So you watch them for bad movie entertainment as much as you watch them for being good, entertaining films on their own. Beyond that, then you can break it into categories. Go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is also interesting is my... I'm realizing we're keeping with the theme of Dub's international ignorance. I know so little about like Chinese history that when I'm watching these movies, I have no clue when they're supposed to take place. Right, so I'm thinking, is this the 1200s? Is this the 1700s? Is this how it is in China now?
I think it doesn't matter if it's 12 or 17. I think if you think that it's now, we might have an issue.
Well, occasionally, if you're lucky, in some of the really weird ones, or the Filipino offshoot films, you will get time travel. And you will get what the British voiceover actors refer to as ninjas, ninjas in the modern era.
Say that again?
So ninjas. You know, dressed in black,
Heading
folks
up.
dressed in
Ninjas?
black, ninjas. Okay, so if you want to practice on being a British voice actor, you don't say ninjas, you say ninjas.
Okay, so the issue is if in like a Seven
Okay.
Samurai issue where you're pleading with them, you would go up to them and say, "Ninja, please."
Yeah, I believe you. I believe you would. Yeah, if you were British, yes. Or the way that we learned up until I'm convinced that when the ninja craze started to kick in, there was an entire group of folks who were completely baffled by what in the world that even was, because they had heard that these sleek warriors who dressed in black and made no sound were ninjas all of these years, and it was I'm sure that was just completely puzzling to them. But there occasionally are movies set in present day as well, and those can be very entertaining because you'll have then this really weird, bizarre mixture of old style kung fu trickery embroiled in almost groovy lava lamps and weird car chases. Now, if you can find some of those movies,
down to that one, that sounds like it's like right up my alley.
heck yeah, it is.
Where instead of getting upset, the hero says to his mother, "Don't freak out, Mama. I'm going to handle those groovy cats," and then get in a rickshaw or something else offensive.
And
so
then
one of the reasons I liked 36 Chamber so much, and one of the reasons it came up is because we were talking about the idea of action servicing like a philosophy or the emotion of the character, and El Tremendo suggested 36 Chamber along those lines. I really liked stuff like that. I really felt like the people making that movie, it may, how do I put this? It may appear cheesy to me today,
right.
but I believe that they believed in what they were doing at the time. And I really like those kind of movies more if you want to tweet me some suggestions. To all of our live viewers, let me see the count now. 0.
That would be a very special. That would be a very special tweet. The 0 tweet will be good stuff. Good stuff indeed. Okay, Bruce Lee's martial arts films are fairly generic stories. Although Enter the Dragon is an excellent starting point, and it has a number.
I saw Enter the Dragon, yeah.
And it's probably if you're ranking kung fu films, it's probably the most well known of the bunch. Certainly.
That's the one with the guy with his army of he had like the metal claws. And...
Correct. Yeah. And they go to an island. John Saxon's in it. They go to John Saxon's island. And they have a big fight.
Please tell me it's called John Saxon.
They spoofed that one in Kentucky Fried Movie.
Yes.
It was one of the longer sketches.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Where he sneaked in by taking a tour of the island, if I'm not mistaken.
And then the alarm's going on, and then all those guys were coming at him, and he's just like beating him up. Like it goes on forever.
But the thing about Bruce Lee is that Bruce Lee actually has on-screen charisma, which is something that a lot of the other martial arts actors. There's always a star, but yeah, there isn't anything that necessarily separates their stardom apart. Bruce Lee is
just because they're pointing the camera at him doesn't mean they deserve it.
Right. Bruce Lee is has a bona fide presence, and he broke through in the Green Hornet series in America, but was also doing films before then and after that, and it's a lot of those movies afterward that started to work for him, and he became internationally renowned as a result of it. So if you're looking for charisma on screen, Bruce Lee is the direction you're going to go. I would recommend Enter the Dragon is an easy introduction. I would also recommend Chinese Connection. There's a movie with a title that is escaping me at the moment that has Chuck Norris in the ending scene very early. Very bare, furry Chuck Norris.
I think that was Return of the Dragon.
Perhaps it was. You might track that one. And there's a movie called Game of Death, which I don't think is really particularly good, but it has a well-known scene with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. That's his final scene.
Of the plane?
Yes, the pilot of Airplane. Correct. So you have one. You have a connection. You have one parody movie connection there, and you have Kentucky Fried Movie, which is doing its own parody as well. Both very good comedic movies in their own right. and I don't know how I just got into that segue. It completely bombed on me.
That was me. I de-segued.
The second category, Dub, to look into are the Jackie Chan films. And the Chan films are very different, more often than not, than the Bruce Lee films for two specific reasons. Chan has a much more comedic, almost vaudevillian Peking opera type approach toward his on-screen persona. That translated to a large degree, obviously, in some of his American films. It's in many of his Hong Kong movies as well.
Yeah, I've actually seen quite a few Jackie Chan movies, and that's not what I was looking for. I wasn't necessarily looking for the funny. He did. I see his movies for the amazing, stunt work. Naturally, I remember seeing. Oh man, what was it? What was his first Rumble in the Bronx? Right when he first came to America.
Wait, that was an American movie though.
Oh yeah, well that's what I mean. When it was his first. I think it was his first big American movie.
It was his second attempt to break through in the States. The first one was The Big Brawl. It didn't go anywhere. That was mid-'80s.
Right.
Rumble in the Bronx was the second go-through.
He was in Cannonball Run.
That's true.
What was he in Cannonball Run?
He was one of the. I guess he was a Japanese driver. American audiences aren't going to tell.
Did he play the Sheik?
He was.
Another offensive stereotype.
Yeah.
Dub, have you seen any of the Asian Jackie Chan films?
I've seen the Drunken Master movies.
Okay.
And what I think the Jackie Chan movies are lacking that I'm looking for is that sincerity. You're absolutely right. He's a vaudevillian actor. He's unquestionably gifted in what he does as a physical performer and physical comedian. Even I would say I enjoyed scenes from The Tuxedo too.
You got to see the stuff he does with.
Okay, let me recommend.
His movies don't really have it.
Who's the guy? Jackie Chan.
Let me recommend a few. Okay, Police Story and Police Story 2. These are all Chan films. Okay.
Those are good.
Police Story and Police Story 2 are phenomenal. I would recommend Crime Story. It's a little bit more serious. It's Chan as a detective. I would recommend the Project A films, which are very vaudevillian, but their stunts are ridiculous. And I would recommend a film called Dragons Forever, which I have seen unsubtitled off a former VHS copy from PAL transferred VHS copy out of a company called Tai Seng, which is a Hong Kong film distributor that put out a lot of these types of videos. Dragons Forever has Sammo Hung, Jackie Chan, and a gentleman whose name I'm going to mispronounce. It's something like Yen Bao.
Was he in the Peking Opera with him?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, and he's the most athletic of the three. There is a fight scene at the end of Dragons Forever that I think is the best Jackie Chan on film. And the three of them are absolutely remarkable. It's got to be a 12 to 20-minute scene that is just fantastic, and for its sheer stunt aspect of it, it's a remarkable piece of work. So, but you're right. He's obviously a very unique taste that is different than the Bruce Lee aspect. Mm-hmm. But the stunts that he puts on film are just, it's absolutely remarkable if the guy's not dead.
Yeah, well, I remember in the outtakes for Rumble in the Bronx, they showed he broke his arm, or he broke his leg, and they fitted his cast to look like his costume, so that even with a broken arm, he could still do the stunt again. Right. It's just it's nuts. It's nuts the stuff that goes on in Asia, and I think that leads into another interesting one. Have you seen any of the Tony Jaa films? No. But I'm going to stop you right there because I've got several movies that I'm not going to even be able to catch up on by next week. I think I've got a good start, and we can come back and talk about this a little bit more, but I wanted to get to Comic-Con. Okay, sure. While we had some time, and I got the feeling that we're going to be talking about that a lot. So Warren and I were talking a little bit beforehand about how people were going crazy for the Batman Superman stuff that was coming out of Comic-Con. And you know how when you go in your Twitter feed and sometimes they take a picture and they don't show you the whole picture, they just show you like a middle section of it?
Right, the little tease part, yeah.
Yeah, the little tease part. So I'm not going to recreate this because I think I can paint a word poem a little bit better. I got the Ben Affleck as Batman, though it doesn't really matter. It's just some guy in a cowl, right?
Yeah, it's all dark and you can't see.
And I got the front part of the cowl into the little furrowed brow here, and it was cut off like that. And then his ears were cut off too. And basically what it looked like was a giant schlong. and the headline for the tweet was "First image of Ben Affleck as Batman." And I'm looking at that picture, and I'm thinking, well, this movie is going to go in a direction that I find very exciting. I'm not going to lie. This is not what I expected Zack Snyder to do with the franchise after Man of Steel. Is to say, I'm going to go for the hard X that Batman deserves.
You think this is Evan Stone's Batman?
Yeah, a full frontal that I think everybody expects to see when they go to a Batman versus Superman movie.
And now those porn parodies are like, damn it!
Well,
knees, why
also
don't you?
undercutting them.
Yeah.
So when you eventually go see the porn, this ain't Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. It's actually going to be a legitimate film with no sex in it.
Like, that was actually really good.
It really said a lot about what we expect from Justice. Yeah.
I was still able to masturbate to it, though.
Yeah, maybe you weren't.
No, I said I was.
About Justice. No. So what were some of the? I didn't pay too much attention to Comic-Con. One of the things I don't like is I don't like cam footage, and I don't like pictures of other people's pictures. So I sort of wait a few weeks before I dig too deep into Comic-Con to see what footage has actually been released. I know Santo mentioned in the email, and this is actually a nice transition from the Kung Fu practical stunts we were talking about how Mad Max Fury Road's trailer came out during Comic-Con to appease the Comic-Con fans. I don't know if you guys did you guys get a chance to see it?
Yeah, I saw the trailer.
It's practical effects all the way through, apparently, and that's part of why it took so long.
George Miller directed it.
Yeah, absolutely, but that's part of why it took so long, and that's I'm not too excited about apocalyptic movies anymore these days. They just I don't know. I kind of seen a lot of them, and I don't know how you can take the Mad Max idea and make it any cooler than the Road Warrior, which is like one of the super coolest movies ever made. But to hear that this was a movie that did not use a lot of CGI, just on its face made me kind of excited about it. But I don't know if it'll be too retro. What did you think, Warren?
As I was watching the trailer, I was like, oh, I hope this is really good because this looks like this could be really good. It looks like it went in a totally. Because Beyond Thunderdome, for what it was really different than Road Warrior. And they were like two different kind of movies to me. And this looked like it went more back to Road Warrior. Mm-hmm. But, I think this is one of those things where I'm going to hold judgment on it because it's such an iconic movie. And yes, they got George Miller, and yes, it looks like it could be good. So I just hope it's good. I mean, the trailer looked really good. The trailer looked really nice. And I think Tom Hardy... If he's the new Mac, right? He's the new Mad Max. I mean, he
can you say that again?
Tom Hardy.
Yeah.
He's Mad Max. He's Max, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
yes.
I think he could pull it off, and he's got that kind of toughness, and so it's got the potential to be good. But movies like this that are remade tend not to be good. For the most part.
It's a tough thing to pull together, but I also agree. I think Tom Hardy is one of those actors where he can take the weight of the camera.
This is one of those films, I think, where when you first hear that they're doing it, you say, "What the fuck are you doing?" Because the Road Warrior is so iconic and so much in its time, and it's hard to imagine that anything you could do could build upon it in any way. Yet, since George Miller is involved in it, if anybody is gonna fuck it up, it might as well be him.
Right.
And if you and conversely, if you're going to have, if you've got a shot at remaking it and doing it right, he's probably the best guy to be in charge of it. So
but it's no guarantee.
But there's no
I
guarantee.
got one word for that.
Sure.
Prometheus.
That's so true. Oh, that's absolutely and that sums it up right on the money.
So anything could happen.
So
I'm not
a movie
that have become that's turned cliches from the past 30 years.
I wish they hadn't. I wish he hadn't have done it, but I hope I'm pleasantly surprised and it's fantastic.
Yeah,
and,
no,
but I agree with you. I don't know what's left to do in that Mad Max world.
Right. But even in that genre, I mean, his movies, those Mad Max movies, created the post-apocalyptic worlds for the past 30 years. I mean, they've always been like that.
That's a really interesting question. Is the movie that set the standard when it's remade 30 years later going to look cliche because of what it spawned as a result?
Yeah.
I would think it absolutely is. It was a little bit about what we were talking about last week, I think it was 2 weeks ago, about how if you see the thing that started the cliche, are you still irked by the cliches you see? Yeah, I think it's funny that Mad Max was the movie that spawned post-apocalyptic movies for 30 years, from The Road Warrior to Mad Max.
Yes.
Everything in between. Your books of Eli, The Roads.
Yeah,
but I'm really looking forward to that. That was one of the. I don't know if it was released for Comic-Con, but it was one of the mid-Comic-Con results. The other news that I thought was really interesting coming out of Comic-Con is nobody's hating on Guardians of the Galaxy, which I think is really good news for that movie.
Everybody's loving. It's getting so much love. Like, I can't even believe how much people are loving it.
Yeah, they seem to have done it right. I guess the guy who created the original Guardians of the Galaxy book had some reservations, and then came out and said he thinks it's Marvel's best movie ever. Not that he has anything invested in that movie doing well, I'm sure, but still, he didn't have to give it that kind of praise.
No.
So yeah, I'm excited about that one, because that seems to be good news coming out.
What
have you guys heard?
On Thursday. I've heard about Guardians of the Galaxy,
or just in general, what came out of Comic-Con that was.
I saw. Did you see the trailer for Tusk, the Kevin Smith movie?
Oh no, I haven't seen that yet.
It is.
That was open on my desk all day yesterday.
They call it horror comedy, and as I'm watching the trailer, I'm like, "Where's the comedy?" like there were some one-liners and stuff like that, but the whole thing was really disturbing. It's what's his name? Who's the actor?
Tom Hardy.
No, not Tom Hardy.
Jackie Chan.
Who's the guy that Kevin Smith let? His name is. He was in the Red State. He was the preacher in Red State. Michael.
Rappaport?
No, but what's his name? Quentin Tarantino loves him too. He was in Kill Bill. He was the sheriff. All those kind of indie filmmakers really love this actor.
Right.
And I can't remember his name, but he is great. Like every time he's on screen, he just kind of commands it. But anyway, he's in the movie, and the whole thing is just kind of upsetting. Like just watching the preview, I was like upset. I was like, oh my god, I am disturbed but curious to see what this movie is about.
Is it Michael Parks?
Michael Parks, that's what it is. Yes.
Something disturbed but curious is how I felt when I saw that Batman promo. I am disturbed but curious.
But curious. So yeah, I saw Tusk.
I needed to watch.
Tusk looked good, and then I did catch a clips of what they showed at on the fuzzy cam, on somebody's phone cam, of the Batman v Superman preview that they showed.
What it was so describe what you saw.
Well, it's what they described on the website. You see Batman on a rooftop somewhere, and he kind of turns on the bat signal and kind of points it up in the air, and then in the beam of light is Superman, and Superman's eyes are like glowing red, and Batman in his cowl, his eyes are kind of glowing too, which kind of reminded me of the Frank Miller of Dark Knight Returns. He had that like suit on, if you remember, and they just kind of look like they're facing off, and everybody's cheering, and then it kind of goes to the logo.
So So do either of you know why this isn't The Dark Knight Returns? Like,
I'm not the guy to ask.
Why the movie isn't Dark Knight Returns?
well,
I
it
mean,
seems
did
like
you
they
read
want to
Dark
do a
Knight
Batman
Returns?
Superman crossover,
Did
but
you read
there's
it?
already one that exists. Why aren't they just drawing heavily on?
I
Oh, you know
don't think
something? I
they're
just
drawing
realized it,
heavily.
so that they can franchise out more stuff.
Well, I don't think they're doing it because the difference is in the Dark Knight Returns. I mean, did you read Dark Knight Returns? Did you read
Yeah,
it?
I loved it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you remember, like
Yeah,
Superman
I
wasn't a
absolutely
good
loved
guy
it.
in
I thought
that
it was
movie.
fantastic.
Superman wasn't a good
He
guy, and at
wasn't.
the end,
I don't
Batman
think. Well, we
and
can
Batman
debate
faced
that because I
yeah,
don't think he was a bad guy necessarily.
no, he was a
I
puppet
think.
of the government. That was Batman's whole point. That was the whole point. Like Superman was the puppet, Batman, and then Batman slinked away and like started his own little army at the end of it. So like they can't
Right,
really
right,
use
right. He,
that.
he quit but didn't quit. It was,
Yeah, he quit and started something
but
completely different. And I think if you want to move into Justice League, you have to have them become friends at the end.
well, absolutely, and I think you could still have them become friends at the end of the Dark Knight Returns. And I think what's so interesting is it sets up the sort of superhero buddy cop dynamic between the two of them, where one is all light and righteousness, and the other one is all dark and vigilantism. I didn't see Superman as necessarily the bad guy in that story so much as he was an agent of the system, and your sympathies naturally fall with Batman, who by design has to work outside the system. So they were both right.
I don't know.
I think that's a great I think that's a great dynamic, and I think it's a great start for a Justice League concept moving forward.
In Dark Knight,
I just
in Dark Knight
always
Returns,
hate.
in Dark Knight Returns, Superman was more. I got the feeling he was a douchebag. If you read like in other Justice Leagues, it's a lot stronger of their style, like head to head. But it's more of well, they're
Right,
both
their
right.
dichotomy.
Yeah, you get it. You go well, they're
Yeah.
both right, and then you just kind of fall in like well, the situationally who's more right, and they have to deal with whatever the situation is. Um,
Right.
Plus, I think they also for the movie they want to introduce Wonder Woman, so they have the big three of the Justice League. I read that Aquaman's going to be in it too. So I think they had to work all this in. So I think it does pull. It does pull from the Dark Knight Returns. I mean, clearly that's his costume. I mean, that's what he looks like in the Dark Knight Returns.
Right.
The design.
But I'm wondering if I think one of the things we can all agree on is that Zack Snyder has the capability of being an absolute disaster as a storyteller.
Oh, he's a horrible storyteller.
I mean, his Sucker Punch was just, in terms of story, one of the worst movies I've ever seen. It looked amazing and smoking hot for most of the movie. I'm not going to deny that. That was, oof.
It was a visually stunning movie, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm thinking to another conversation Warren and I were having about the Lego Batman 2 game, where the Lego Batman 2 game's plot was a Batman-Superman story. And then, as you kind of went along and unlocked stuff, you would randomly get Green Lantern for no reason. He wasn't involved in the story. It's just Green Lantern showed up, and Wonder Woman showed up. And now I've got Moloch or whatever, or I guess wrong thing. But, now I've got some random DC bad guy.
Moloch, Walkman is there?
And it didn't tie into the story. It was just a superfluous introduction of another character that you recognize, and I'm convinced that that's what this Batman versus Superman is going to be. Is that it's going to be a Batman and Superman story, and then I'm going to have to make a call, and you call up Wonder Woman, and it's I'm going to have to call my friends out in space, and you call up Green Lantern, and he comes out, and I think that Zack Snyder is so ham-fisted. I don't think he's going to be able to pull off a multi-character piece.
Yeah,
That's my take anyway.
There's a definite danger. I mean, I guess at the same time, when Iron Man was first coming out, everybody was like, "Oh, this is going to be a mess," and whatever. But right now, DC has a track record of screwing things up. I mean, I think Christopher Nolan is producing or executive producing, and he's kind of has some sort of say in it.
Checks. Christopher Nolan is cashing fat checks, and that's all he's doing.
He's just lighting his cigars with his checks.
Exactly. From his
Superman
castle,
issue number one.
Center of Warner Brothers Studios.
Yeah, he's doing that. But I would like to think that somebody over there is going to go look over at Marvel Studios on their big mountain of money, doing everything right, and go, you know what, guys? Maybe we should try and do something like that. Like I would just like to think that. I mean, it may not happen, but
I'm yeah, unfortunately I'm keeping the camera on me most of the time because it looks like you guys are skipping out. I don't know if that's gonna be that way in the final video. Shu, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just listening in.
Okay. I think
why has DC screwed up? What are examples of DC screwing up, whereas Marvel's been more consistent?
I think that when we covered the Marvel Universe episode, I would only be summing up, but Gabe had a really good insight into it, whereas DC never had the kind of financial troubles Marvel had, and never was in a position to be wholly bought out the way Marvel was, and sort of retooled from the ground up. So they've always had a string of semi-successful films, but like the Green Lantern didn't quite catch, and they don't seem to be making the same kind of impact culturally that the Marvel films are now. But you can say that they may look poor by dint of comparison, but Superman Returns wasn't a failure. It wasn't a huge critical success, but it just didn't click with people. It didn't become an instant classic. Man of Steel, same way. I think people enjoyed it. I'm sure it made its money back, but it didn't say anything or really sort of touch the zeitgeist the way like an Iron Man did.
only the Dark Knight.
And then finally, they're not. Well, and then there's the Dark Knight movies, which show that they don't need retooling. Like they can still do it right from time to time. And really right. I mean, the first Batman movie was one of the highest-grossing movies of all time, and then this Christopher Nolan's second Batman movie becomes the highest-grossing movie of all time. So every couple of years they'll hit with Batman, and it'll work. But what concerns me about these Justice League or about Dawn of Justice is this idea of, and I believe we talked about it in the Marvel episode, toyonics. This idea that they are adding characters in simply for the sake of adding them in, and that there is no greater story they're trying to tell. Whereas you wouldn't start with an Avengers movie and then tell the stories individually. You would start with an Iron Man, and then you would tell a Thor, and then you would tell a Captain America, and then you might try and get a Hulk in there sometime. Maybe they had two Iron Mans, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And then you bring the characters together. You establish the characters, and then you unite them. But starting in one movie with two major characters who can easily hold their own films, and then adding in 2 or 3 other characters who can easily hold their own films, I think it's going to get muddled, and I think it's going to start feeling like the Spider-Man's movies do, where there's just too many villains.
But see, that's also part of the thing is that it's not, they've been trying to get a Wonder Woman movie off the ground for like 15 years. I mean, there's been talk of Wonder Woman forever, and same with Aquaman. They got a Green Lantern movie off. They paid for $300 million, and it tanked. And I think that kind of made everybody at DC kind of scramble. Start playing the blame game, and then whatever grand plan they might have had behind the scenes kind of fell apart.
Yeah, that's true. I suppose if the Green Lantern movie did well enough, and then you could get a Wonder Woman movie
where are
launched.
Because I mean, where are they? Where in the process are they botching this? Because, I mean, there isn't anybody who's going to say that the Green Lantern movie was that good. Whereas compared to some of the Marvel movies at least seem to, whether you argue what scale of excellence to acceptability or mediocrity they happen to land on, to a large degree you can see that at least there's some thought behind what they're trying to put out. Is there some script doctoring process, or is there's some lack in the pecking order that seems to be infringing upon the characters in DC, or are the characters in DC perhaps not as attractive overall and transitioning into cinema?
Well, I think what I've read is that, well, first of all, I don't think DC has anybody really driving the bus the way they have like Kevin Feige at Marvel. who is sort of like this kind of lording over all of this. Like they've kind of given controls to one guy, and he's sort of kind of mapped everything out. Like they have it mapped out for like 10 years. You know, like how they want to produce movies. Another thing that I read was that where these Marvel characters, a lot of them have superpowers and stuff like that. They're not special effect intensive as, say, like having a Green Lantern or a Martian Manhunter. I mean, like only Iron Man really flies, and Hulk is the Hulk. He's a CG character, and then kind of beyond that, it's like kind of your normal action movie special effects going on. But you know, with Superman, it feels like it would be like a $500 million movie to do a Justice League movie with all these, like Wonder Woman flies, like everybody's got these superpowers. That's kind of, you know, and maybe Marvel, like they didn't have Ant-Man originally because, you know, Ant-Man, he also becomes a giant.
Yeah.
Like he's
huge. He's a super scientist.
Yeah,
he doesn't have any sort of innate powers.
Well, he has the helmet, he can control ants, but then he also becomes, like, well, I just remember from the Avengers, he becomes huge, of the comics, he becomes huge.
Yeah.
But, you know, kind of beyond that...
I think Warren's absolutely right. I think it's the Feig factor. It's this idea that you don't have a single individual who's shepherding all of these projects with an eye on a greater level of storytelling. Each individual IP is treated separately. Batman is sort of treated as Batman, and yes, DC owns it, and Superman is treated as Superman, and yes, DC owns it, but the storytelling acumen that they've developed in comics has not been translated into cinema the way it has in the Marvel Universe, where they've been able to take the intertwining and the long-term story plotting and translate it, because they've had Disney behind them. You know, all of this started when Disney bought them, and if there's any company that knows how to thoroughly exploit an IP, it's Disney. So I think that's it. There is no one you know of at DC that's doing the same job.
This was starting. Disney bought them as this was starting. Everybody kind of saw, like when Iron Man was a hit, and they sort of announced this like Phase 1. I think, did they buy them after Iron Man 2 already?
I think so.
Let's ask the internet, because I'm very interested in this now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Disney said, hey, wait a minute, something big is going to happen here. If we buy them, Marvel's going to jump at it because, like, it'll pay for their plan. And, you know, so far, you know, the only movie you could really you could argue two movies were kind of failures, but they weren't. Like, Iron Man 2 was just sort of a meh. Like, it was still good and fun, but it just felt not as good. And the Hulk wasn't that great. Even although I enjoyed it, I liked the Hulk. You know, it's not my favorite movie, but
2009, Disney bought it.
And when was Iron Man? Iron Man was 2008.
I believe so.
Okay, so maybe it was like right before Iron Man 2 was in production.
Yeah, in 2007, Kevin Feige was named president, just as production of Iron Man began.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he just has a plan. I think it comes down to, you know, cutting off, you know, too many chefs spoil the dinner, or whatever the expression is. And I think if you have one guy controlling.
It's rumored to be Kevin Feige's controlling nature that drove Edgar Wright from Ant-Man.
Right.
Which is a shame, because I think we'd all like to see what he could do with it, but clearly, and is it Feig? I don't even know how to pronounce it.
Feig.
I'm going to call him Kevin. Clearly, okay. Kevin has he has things well in hand there. So I can't imagine that the opinion of Edgar Wright would be too damaging to him. He probably cried himself to sleep on his giant pillow made of money.
In his big Hulkbuster Iron Man suit that he has made for himself.
Life-size, actual working Hulkbuster Iron Man suit that he flies to work from his Malibu home, which is also a recreation of Iron Man's home in Malibu.
Yeah. So, yeah. He defends his critics with his Captain America shield. And
Right. Did I mention all of these things that I'm describing are actually made out of money? He has a Hulkbuster suit made out of dollar bills.
$100 bills.
All right. So, anybody looking forward to anything this week?
Guardians of the Galaxy.
Guardians of the Galaxy on Thursday.
Yeah, I'm gonna go see Thursday, I think.
Yeah, I'm curious. It's a razor's edge. It could be craptacular.
You know what though? Every person who has seen it already, like critics and everything, are loving it. I don't know how it could be. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
usually there's our signs, and I have not seen any signs. Like if anything, I probably should get my hopes down because my hopes are so high now at this point that I could be disappointed,
You
and
mean
it still could
you
be
mean like
great.
you mean like the signs for Lucy, where the stars aren't willing to promote it, so they have to show screenings for tastemakers like Shu? Morgan Freeman was on Jimmy Kimmel, or he was on one of the late night shows the other night. I'm just aware of this because we tried to cover it at work, but he was on one of the late night shows, and he didn't even mention that Lucy was coming out this weekend. Like he was just not even.
I was in Shawshank Redemption.
It was hey, you can catch it on Shawshank Redemption on TNT now. Yeah.
And that's it. Anything else you want to talk about, Morgan? Nope. Nope, that's it.
Nope. Nothing really comes to mind.
But I will
Don't ask me
narrate
about
an
my
entire
accident.
segment.
All right, so let's start wrapping up. I don't see an image for Shu. Hopefully he's there, but we're cutting to your little icon, Shu. Where can people find you?
I see him.
Let's go with Shuniverse. SCHU-niverse.
Nice, there it is. All right, and over to Warren. Where might people find you if they're on the hunt?
If they're on the hunt, nowhere. But if they just want to go to Twitter, they can go to @WarrenGraff.
So, Warren, assuming you're going to be on the losing end of the most dangerous game, what environment would you like to run from hunters in? Forest or urban?
I would definitely not like to be running in a bulletproof vest in an armored vehicle.
Away from George Miller.
George Miller.
Filling in for, poorly filling in for Santo this
Oh,
week.
fantastically.
Oh, thank you. I got the clap. You gave me the clap. Nice. You can reach me at FilmGeekDub, where I will be tweeting any Hong Kong kung fu movies that I happen to watch. Is there a sign-off? Oh, Shu, you didn't play the theme.
No, because you didn't ask. Man, you suck as a host. What do you think I was going to do? Just kind of chime in and start playing?
Totally my bad.
You want me to play this baby out?
Oh, you're coming. You sound like you're auto-tuned. You're probably not auto-tuned. All right, until next week, we'll see you all online.